And then we'll talk the Mets. Free agency, still a hot topic. Going to be a hot topic for a while. What are we going to... Is Jacob deGrom going to opt out? Should we re-sign? What is a mutual option? I think I get it. I understand what each of those words mean. What does it mean in the baseball world? And how is it going to apply to Chris Bassett? So we'll take a look at not only a little stay or go with a lot of the Mets free agents, but we'll also take a little gander at some top free agents that I like, some top free agents I dislike. Not personally, not personal, strictly business. Let's talk Mets. Buck Showalter is named Manager of the Year, well deserved. Seemed to push all the right buttons, made all the right moves for most of the season. I think people started to question him towards the end of the season when things got a little out of hand, not going to the bullpen earlier. Batting matchups that we had, like why are you going with Darren Ruff when you have Francisco Alvarez? Why are you going with Francisco Alvarez when you have so-and-so? I think there were a lot more moves being questioned towards the end there where we were coming up short. You make the move and you win and you're a genius. You make the move and you lose and it's like you're the GOAT, or not the GOAT, the WOAT. So yeah, I agree with that. I'm wondering if his tenure is going to be marked as like great in the regular season, not so great in the postseason. Like, is that his legacy? Really hope that's not the case. But Jeremy Hefner is returning as a pitching coach. It looks that way, which I'm fine with that. I think he's done a pretty decent job. There's news coming out about JT Realmuto, and he said he questions or wonders why the Mets passed on him. And there was all that, chatter about him not wanting to play in New York. And he's like, no, I never said that. I never felt that. I was curious why they didn't make a more considered effort and push to sign me, because I would have entertained it. I would have just been happy to discuss. And Freezing Cold Takes retweeted that SNY graphic with James McCann on the left and in a Mets uniform and JT Realmuto on the right after the Mets signed McCann, and showing their numbers from the 2019-2020 seasons, how they were pretty comparable, or McCann would just edged him out. And yeah, how did that turn out? Realmuto is now world-class catcher, just won the Gold Glove over Tomas Nido, our backup catcher. So it's like, yeah, I think we lost on that one. If we could only go back in time, that would be pretty nice to have JT over James McCann. I don't even know what you do with McCann at this point. There are 5 Mets nominated as finalists for the 2022 Silver Slugger: Alonso, McNeil, Lindor, Marte, and Nimmo. So, if we can keep those guys, Nimmo, maybe we won't be able to keep him, but that's a pretty good crew. So for everyone saying like, we don't have sluggers, I mean, we have silver sluggers all over the place. We're also moving in the fence in the right center field for some kind of fan experience attraction, whatever the hell that means. I doubt they're putting in a pool, but it would be interesting if they have like a heated pool for for like 3 of the 6 months that we'll be playing. But you gotta think that that's going to help out our left-handed hitters, namely Lindor and McNeil, and hopefully Nimmo, possibly a free agent slugger, which we'll get to in a little bit. I decided to take another gander and a look at our free agents. I think it was pretty raw. We had just lost against the Padres when I looked at our free agents and had made some quick knee-jerk stare-go decisions. To be honest, I guess I'm out on Dan Vogelbach. It'd be one thing if he's a right-handed DH and you want to bring in a left-handed DH because the majority of pitchers are right-handed. So it's like, okay, on occasion, if we have a left-handed pitcher, then we can start Vogelbach as the DH and he can give us that nice little supplemental boost. But he's a left-handed DH facing mostly righties. It's a club option, so be interesting to see how they. I guess it wouldn't hurt them too much to sign a club option for $5 million, and then he's that vaunted bat off the bench. I don't know exactly what his numbers are off the bench as a pinch hitter, but I'd have to imagine it'd be nice to have him waiting in the wings than it would have some of the other bats that they have coming off the bench. Darren Ruff. Trevor Williams, I said this before, I'll say it again. Yeah, I would re-sign him. Seth Lugo is interesting. I have him as a stay re-sign for some like $7.2 million, but I don't know. I just don't feel like he's not the Seth Lugo of old. I would think that if he was putting up the same kind of outings that he was earlier in his career, it would be a no-brainer. But there have been plenty of times where he gives up the lead or he eats into our insurance. You know, been plenty of times where it's like we're up by 2 or 3 runs and then he gives up 2 and you're like, okay, now we're only up by 1. It just makes games a lot more entertaining than they need to be. Ottavino, I gave it some more thought. I think you pass on him. He's 37. I think you can find something better out there on the market. Who? I don't know. I'd actually like to see them bring back Tyler Naquin. I think that's a good 4th outfielder, especially with that wall coming in. I wouldn't mind Tyler Naquin. Mikel Gibbons is a mutual option. I forgot to look this up, but I would think that with a mutual option, both parties would have to agree. And I would have to say he had a fairly rough stretch in the beginning of his tenure with the Mets, but wasn't he pretty decent down the stretch towards the end of the season? All that said, he's 32. I think most people would be okay with moving on from him, but I wouldn't hate it if they brought him back, especially if you get more of what he gave us towards the end of the season. Nimmo, obviously, I would love to have him back. I think I would love to have him be a lifetime Met. I think he's like the epitome. That would be such a great story. You know, to have a lifelong Met like that. I would love it. He's going to be 30, currently making $7 million, and the market value, I think this is from Spot Track, has him at like almost $22 million per year. Ooh, baby. A lot of dough. And kind of worth it. I mean, you think about the 22 season, he didn't have many slumps. And if anything, when the team was slumping, it felt like he was one of the only guys that was producing. It was very rare that he would slump for that long, too. I don't think he had very prolonged slumps. Whereas, you know, I think even Lindor, as great of a bounce back season as it was for him, he still had some pretty prolonged times where it's like he just disappeared. Same with Alonso. McNeil, not so much. So honestly, I think it's worth the money, and I would give it to him. 5 years? Fuck it, let's do 7. Taijuan Walker's a player option. He's 30. It's like, well, you could make 13. I guess the market value on him is 13.8 million. It's a pretty good guy to have as your 4 or 5, you know, because that's how he's, I mean, that's where he was. He was a 4 or 5 this year. I think having him as a 4 or 5, like a 5 at that price is not too shabby. I mean, he still scares me a lot of the time because it's like, coasting, awful inning coasting. It's like, can we just get rid of the awful inning? As a 5, I don't hate it. Trevor May, I think there are a lot of people that are saying we shouldn't re-sign him. And I understand that. I think if he wasn't, for me, it's like, he's just such a likable dude. I think if he wasn't so likable, I'd be more apt to move on from him because he did have such a horrific 22 season. And I don't know that 21 season was like one of his better seasons. I'd have to look back through the numbers, but I think I honestly think the 23 season could be a great bounce back year for him. I think like, okay, you went through all the rough spots, COVID, whatever, in 22, and you kind of got a glimpse of it in the wild card series against the Padres. I thought he pitched very well in the Padres series. And so maybe can he carry that over to the 2023 season? That would be huge. So it would suck to see him leave, but I wouldn't get that pissed. I would understand it given what he went through last season, but I do think he's prime and due for a big 23 season. Bassett's the big one for me. It's a mutual option, just like Mikel Gibbons. Made $19 million in 22. His market value would be around $21 million. Is he a good number 3? Yes, for the most part. Yeah, I just like it's tough. Yeah, personally, I guess, yeah, because I mean, we'll get into the available free agents that are out there, and like all the pitchers are old. Like they're all on the downside of their careers for the most part. The majority of them are just all past their prime, cost a lot of money, and like I just don't think it's, you know, we already have 2 dudes we have one that's like basically on the eyeing up retirement, you know, and then you have another one that has given you everything he has and is probably on the decline. But to make a comparison to the Giants, is Jacob deGrom the Saquon Barkley of the Mets? Meaning Barkley has like crazy, outrageous, awesome rookie year, offensive rookie of the year, Pro Bowler, whatever. 2019 gets hurt. misses a bunch of games. 2020 misses all of 2020. Comes back 2021 was his first year after the big injury, so he doesn't put up quite the numbers he wanted. So was Jacob deGrom's 2022 like Saquon Barkley's 2021? Of course, this year, Saquon Barkley in 2022, playing at all-pro level, Pro Bowl, second leading rusher in the NFL, looking like he's back to being his old self. Is 2023 going to be that season for Jacob deGrom, where it's like, okay, I was only really able to give you 4 or 5 high quality shutdown innings before the wheels kind of came off. Whereas before he's giving you 7 innings almost every outing. Now he's giving you 4 or 5. Is that a side effect or consequence of his surgery and not being completely 100%? Hard to say that when it's like, dude, he's throwing 101 miles per hour for 3-4 innings straight, but then it's like, then all of a sudden he's throwing changeups and curveballs every pitch. It's like, I guess you do hold on. I guess you do re-sign Bassett. You know, maybe this is fuel for him to say, okay, I kind of got ahead of myself. I talked a big game and I let the team down. I let the franchise down. And now I want to make it up to them and I want to make it up to myself because I didn't like how things ended here in 2022. So now I'm going to come out and I'm going to be better and I'm not going to let that happen in 23. If that's the mentality, if that's the attitude, could be worth it. But you do need someone to replace Carrasco because Carrasco, he made $12 million in 22. He's going to be 36. I'd say no dice. I would not re-sign Carrasco. I mean, he barely could give you 5 innings and he would often put you in a hole in many of the early innings in his starts. Although he kind of that curtailed significantly towards the end of the season. I still think you can do better. You want guys that can give you 6 or 7, and even Walker, who's 5 years younger. A lot of times he's only giving you 5 innings. And yeah, maybe that's the evolution of baseball, and that's how things are shaking out for a lot of starters now, where they're only going to give you 5 innings. But let's do better. Like, let's try and get guys that can get you into that 7th inning. If Walker opts out, it's like, thank you for your service. Wish you the best. If the team passes on Carrasco, it's like, okay, now we know what we need to do. We need to get 2 arms, and they need to be guys that are dependable workhorses. And if that means that they have a high 3 ERA, but they're going to give you 200 plus innings, I'm fine with that. You look back at like some of the rotations that we've had in better years, championship years. And it's like you had guys that not every pitcher has to have like a sub 3 ERA or even a like low 3 ERA. If you have a guy that's like 3.89 ERA, but he's giving you, kind of like Bartolo Colon, where he's just giving you 6 or 7 innings every outing. And yeah, maybe he's giving up 2-3 runs in that span, but that should put us in a decent situation to win most of those ball games. It's when you have a pitcher who gives up 2-3 runs in 5 innings and you have to go to your bullpen early, so you're using an arm that normally you could save. You get what I'm getting at. You get what I'm getting at. Edwin Diaz is a must sign. I mean, that's, to me, I feel like that's priority number 1. Sign Diaz, lock him up, and then you got your closer for the next at least 5 years, I would think. Hopefully, maybe 3 years. And then deGrom is the player option. Everyone's waiting with bated breath for the goat to tell us whether he's staying or leaving. What a freaking move if he decides to go somewhere else. If he's just like, nah, I've had enough of the Mets and all their LOLs and their trials and tribs. It's like, dude, you're so close to winning a World Series. You now have an awesome owner. You now have a legitimate owner. You now have a great manager. You have a good supporting cast. Like, you look at the lineup and you're not ashamed of the lineup each and every day, like we were from 2009 to 2014 into 2018, 2017. I mean, there were like so many years in a row where you look at the lineup and you're like, what the heck? We're going to win with this? What the frick? And now we do have a pretty good lineup, and it's only going to get better. They're not going to rest on their laurels. You're still going to pick up maybe a bat or 2. You got to think. And like, yeah, you don't want to tinker too much with a 101 win team. So I don't know. Whatever past transgressions happened against, whatever crimes we committed against Jacob deGrom, like, just figure out how we can, put a salve on those wounds, and then let's go out and win a freaking championship, dude. I know he's so placid. He's Lake Placid. Like, he's the chillest dude on earth. And it seems like he, on the outside perspective, on the surface, it kind of looks like he's perturbed a lot of the time and annoyed. And I get it, because it's like you've given us so much so many high quality outings that have resulted in no decisions and losses when they shouldn't have. I freaking get it, dude. I totally understand. But like, you come back, you win a championship with the Mets. You're getting a street named after you. You're getting a statue. Like, you're getting your Ring of Honor. You're getting your number retired. You're getting all that. You opt out and go to like the freaking Rangers. Blah. I don't know, dude. I just like, how do we make it right, Jacob? You know, his salary is $30.5 million in 2022, bargain. And then the market value is $42 million, which I thought would be higher. And my guess is like, maybe that's what he goes to the Mets and he says, listen, I could get 42 mil if I leave. What are you giving me? Like, that's the floor. That's like, the bidding will start at 42 million. And so I wouldn't be shocked if that goes up to like 50 million and the Mets pay it because, you know, we feel like we owe it to him for all the years of, lights out performances. But then if like, it's just, I don't know. I have that doomsday negative mindset where it's like, we pay him 50 mil a year. He comes out and he's still got these arm issues. He's got the blister issue and he's only going to give us 4 or 5 innings per outing. And it's like, they're great. But then it's like, now we need to, I think that's why Trevor Williams is so important. You know, he's like the now starting Jacob deGrom and Trevor Williams. Like, you know, Trevor's going to have to come in for 2 or 3 innings just to bridge the gap to the setup and closer. So now for the free agents that are not currently Mets or on the current payroll or were on the payroll in 2022, the top available free agents in Major League Baseball. Let's take a quick gander at that. First and foremost, a hell no to Justin Verlander. No, thank you. No. And likewise, it's a no from me, dog, on Clayton Kershaw. It's a no to both those guys. We don't need aging arms. That's not, we have 2 aging arms. We had 3 aging arms last year. We now have 2, which is crazy to say about Jacob because he's only 34. He's going to be 35. And it felt like before this season, like, oh, he's going to pitch till he's 40 or beyond. There was talks about him being like the Tom Brady of Major League Baseball. And then you saw last season, you're like, But again, maybe that's just a consequence of the surgery that he had. So I'm out on Verlander, Kershaw, or anyone in that bracket, that tax bracket. I don't think it's no, especially like both those guys, Verlander and Kershaw, have had their issues in the postseason. So we're going to bring in another aging arm that looks great in the regular season, but then come postseason, just like can't string it together. There's reports of Nimmo possibly having interest from the Rockies, which makes sense. I mean, that was his team growing up because he was in Wyoming. Wyoming doesn't have a baseball team, so they watch the Rockies. And so Nimmo to the Rockies going closer to home, 5 years and $120 million. I get it. This is the breakdown from Spot Track. Nimmo's health has been the biggest thing holding back a nice extension, but he found his way into 150 games heading toward free agency. Prototypical leadoff hitter, plays excellent center field. It's just interesting to read that after all these years. Finances for these types of players have been in decline, but he's shown enough to prove he's cut above the average outfielder. Should find a deal that doubles his current $7 million paycheck and the valuation of $22 million. I think to lock him up as your center fielder, because what's the alternative? You let him go, and there's been discussion about this. Like, okay, you let him go. Well, then Judge is your top priority. Judge is absolutely, you have to land Judge, and then you move Marte to center, which Buck said Marte is comfortable with and that he's comfortable with. And I mean, honestly, that's not a bad outfield, but again, Marte is not like healthy 162 games of the year. We'll be lucky if we get 120. What are you going to do for the other 40? Huh? Whereas Nimmo is pretty consistent. I know that he's, like they said, he's had his injuries in the past, health issues in the past, but you know, that this was a pretty good season where you saw the fruits of his labor, the benefits of him staying healthy. He's like consistently producing. All right. And then there's Aaron Judge. You'll be hard pressed to find a list that doesn't include Judge at the top of it. The 30-year-old posted a career season to finish off its team control term with the Yankees. They're saying $300 million over 8 years. That's $37.5 million per year. It's slightly more than Mike Trout's current $37.1 million, which is the top annual adjusted approximate value, whatever, among position players. Would be nice. It would be nice, especially if we lose Nimmo. Again, it's champagne problems if you sign Judge and then it's like, well, what are you going to do with Canna? What do you do with Nimmo? My guess is that you would majority of the time you would have Marte playing left, and then Canna is kind of like your big bat off the bench, or maybe he's your DH, or maybe Aaron Judge is a DH. So I get, there's plenty of options to play with. So I'm all for signing Aaron Judge. 8 years though. Be 38 at the end of that. I don't know. That's what it takes. If he's hitting 62 homers in his age 30 season, hopefully at age 38, he's hitting at least 20 home runs a season. Yeah, but that would be a nice little addition. And then I feel like I see this dude's name on the list every single year, and we just never do anything with it, or it never happens. Wilson Contreras, the catcher from the Cubs. The Spot Track was surprised he wasn't moved at the deadline, and not what he used to be, but $16 million as the floor for his next deal. Power hitting catcher. Cubs will slap a qualifying offer on him, which would slow his market. But yeah, I mean, I know Tomas Nido is a fan favorite, Gold Glove finalist, and was actually provided a huge spark offensively, was hitting well in September. But is that a flash in the pan? Is that something you can really count on? Also, do you want to spend that much on a catcher where it's like two of your pitchers, maybe even three of your pitchers, starting pitchers, don't want to use him? Like they just love Nido that much? It's like they tried to make it work with McCann, and then it was like that didn't last very long. So do you sign him, try and trade McCann, or outright him, DFA him? I think that the catching situation is like a quagmire at this point. I mean, do you sign him and say, hey, like, we know that we told you McCann's the guy and we want you to use him, but like, please warm up to this guy because we just spent a lot of money on him. So I know that Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson have both been mentioned as possibilities for the Mets, which is interesting because they're both shortstops. If you sign them, my guess is that you trade Escobar, or you have McNeil in the outfield, right? So Escobar is starting at third, and then you have Swanson or Turner at second. Now there are some people saying that Turner played center, and that could be that would give him the added bonus or added impetus to sign him over Swanson because he can play the outfield. Okay. I guess it gives you a degree of flexibility. I don't see them as Mets though. There's some players you're just like, I just don't see it. And Trey Turner and Dansby Swanson are those two guys. I just don't see it. Like in a Mets uniform and people that we depend on and count. I just feels like a very Jack Parkman type move in Major League 2. Like I just don't. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But I guess you could trade Escobar. I guess you could play McNeil in the outfield. I'm just not too high on those. I'm sure on paper it makes sense, and like it's an upgrade on paper. I just don't think they'll jive in the clubhouse, and I don't know. It's just a feeling I got. Do we bring back Michael Conforto? He limped into free agency last winter with almost career low numbers, then underwent shoulder surgery as an unsigned player this past April. Didn't sign it with anyone. But they have him valued right around the same amount as Nimmo, $21 million a year. So say we lose out on Judge and Nimmo, is Conforto like your last resort backup plan where it's like, all right, we'll just move Marte or even Conforto in the center, Marte and right. That feels like that doesn't feel like it's, I mean, I know Mets fans would love to have him back, myself included. But it feels like it's not top priority at this point. And then the next couple position players on my list, I have Jock Peterson. This is another guy where I put him in the Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson category. I just don't see him. I can't picture him in a Mets uniform. He took a 1 year, $6 million deal with the Giants this year and ended up with 20 doubles, 23 home runs, 70 RBIs, and 877 OPS, which is fantastic. And, if the Giants, if the rumors are true and the Giants are all in on Aaron Judge, it's possible that they bring him back. 4 year, $60 million baseline, 14.6 million valuation per year. Again, that feels like a last resort move for us. Like if, say we miss out on Nimmo and Judge, it's like, okay, do we go back to Conforto? Do we look at Peterson? So at least there are, if we do miss out on Nimmo and Judge, that's kind of like, I feel like Mets fans would feel it's doomsday scenario. it's not as bad. It's not all doom and gloom. At least we have some options with Peterson and Conforto. And then the DH position, we got to address that, right? I didn't see a ton of DH caliber bats that really stood out to me amongst the list of free agents. The one that did kind of goes against, makes me look like a hypocrite, but JD Martinez, a year removed from 28 home runs, 99 RBIs, and a league leading 42 doubles in the 2021 season. This year's numbers, not quite to that level. He did have 40 doubles though. 2-year, $30 million. I don't hate that. That sounds like a pretty good deal. I would take that. I think that automatically, I think he's a step, obviously an improvement over Vogelbach and Ruff. So I would be happy with that. I would like that very much. Very much. Yes, please. Yes, please. Sign me up. Subscribe. And then you talk about some other names that are being tossed around on the list that I kind of gravitated towards. Most of them there's 3 pitchers and 2 position players. So the first pitcher, obviously starting pitcher, Carlos Rodon. A lot of people saying no to this. I just like that he's a lefty. He's 30 and he comes in at around 31 million. Would be nice to have a lefty starter. Just would be nice, you know? So I would be all in on that. If Rodon's off the board, I wouldn't mind going after Tyler Anderson, 33-year-old lefty for $13.6 million. I played for the Dodgers in 22. And that would be a nice bump up from his $8.5 million that he earned in 22. So I think if you miss on Rodon, go for Anderson. Go for Anderson. And then say we do miss out on Judge and Nimmo and Conforto and Peterson. What are we going to do? I'd take a look at Mitch Haniger. It's 32, right-handed bat, can play right field, had a really good 2021 season, missed a bunch of 2022. I think he only had like 11 home runs, 38 RBIs, but he had a monster 2021 season. He's kind of under the radar, and they can get him for like $14.6 million to be what Darren Ruff was supposed to be. Darren Ruff can take a freaking hike. In terms of the bullpen, I didn't know that. I don't know. I didn't really see a ton of names that I liked, but this one stood out to me. Taylor Rogers, 32, left-hander from Milwaukee, earned $7.3 million in 2022, and the market value is around 13.1 for him in 2023. So I would go in on Taylor Rogers. That feels like a safe bet, and we had Joely Rodriguez, who was kind of spotty, right? As a lefty out of the pen. Would be nice to get a lefty out of the pen. Would be nice to get a lefty in the starting rotation. So if you can get Rodon and Rogers or Rodon or Anderson as a lefty starter, and you get Rogers in the bullpen, that makes me feel good. That brings balance to the force. And then I want to bring back Brandon Drury. I know we have a starting third baseman. If all else fails at the DH level, right? Because a lot of people don't want to run it back with Darren Ruff, and we miss out on JD Martinez, why not bring back Brandon Drury to be your DH? He's 30. He only earned $900,000 with the Padres last year, and his market value is like $6.5 million. So he's just a little bit more expensive than Dan Vogelbach, and he'll probably give you similar, if not better, numbers. So if you bring back Vogelbach as your lefty DH, then you have Drury as your righty DH. I think that's a pretty cool combo. Not ideal, right? Not preferable, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape over it. I think it still gives us a good chance to win. So that's my rundown of the 2022-2023 free agents. It's going to be fast and furious, folks. And I know Epler and Buck said we're not, if it's not broke, to fix it. We don't have many moves to make there, but I don't think they should take such a casual approach this offseason and be like, well, we're pretty much set, right? It's like, well, there's a scenario, a dark timeline where DeGrom opts out, Nimmo signs with the Rockies, Judge signs with the Giants, and then you start to go into panic mode like, oh my God, what happened? So as much as we think that, and this goes back to what Cohen said at his introductory presser, I'm not going to spend like a drunken sailor. You're going to make smart strategic decisions with his money. And that's why Lindor was a calculated risk that he felt strongly about. And the same with Scherzer. I don't know that he's going to do that he might not do that for Judge, because then you're looking at like what happened with Robinson Cano, where he could win a World Series with 3 different teams because he's been cut so much. All right. That's the show. Thank you so much for watching, listening. And for all your positive vibes, I want you to keep doing what you're doing, whatever it is, even if it's bad, because ultimately you're going to learn a lesson. You're going to get back on the right track. All right, that's enough out of me. Yay. Adios, muchachos.